Alrighty, good morning everyone, happy Friday, and welcome back to the Find Your Place podcast. Today is Friday, June 17th, the sun is shining, it's beautiful outside, and we are so excited to have two very special guests with us here today who I've had the pleasure of knowing for 10 years. And if you're in the world of real estate or you're in the Toronto dance scene, it's very likely that you've either worked with or learned from one of these, or even both, incredibly talented people. And when I think of this power duo, who are actually partners in life, dance, business, I think of the word versatility. Yes. And whenever they do work for their clients or even their students, they always make sure that there is that little twist added, a sprinkle on top, and so that whatever it is that they're showcasing, it is always done to the best of their ability. And so Bianca and I are very excited to have two special people with us here today. We introduce you to Andrea, Hanak, and Clifton, Stennett. Welcome. Tune in the clapping.
Yes.
Thank you all for having us. We feel extremely excited and honored to be here. Right,
super excited.
Yes. We're happy to have you guys here. So Bianca and I were together a few weeks ago, and we were talking about, all the topics that we'd like to address with you guys. And I was saying how I think the both of you have very interesting journeys, both on an individual level and as partners. So considering the name of the podcast is the Find Your Place podcast, we thought it'd be neat to have you guys share and we can all discuss how you guys got to where you are today and how you found your place in all of the things that you guys do, because there's, like I said, one thing that really stands out about you guys are very versatile. And I love how you bring in your skills in other spaces and fields and you bring that into the work that you guys do. So how about you guys start us off, give us a little introduction of who you guys are, and then perhaps let us know how you guys met. You don't have to say the whole story. And
her perspective or my perspective?
Both. And then, so we'll leave it to you guys.
Okay, well, Lover, you first.
Well, I was born and raised in Hungary, so I'm actually Hungarian as they come. And when I was about 18 years old, I moved to Canada. It was a very quick decision. It was either staying in Hungary or living the North American dream. And it didn't take me long to decide which one I wanted to do. So I landed from Budapest to Barrie, actually. Went from B to B. It was a very different cultural experience, but I always knew that I wanted to inch my way back to a larger city and to immerse myself in culture. So, going through college in Barrie, I realized that I wanted to just be closer to Toronto. While growing up, I've always been passionate about two things, and one was dance. I loved watching dance. I was never a trained dancer growing up, so not as a young person. I was never given any classes or whatnot, but I loved dance. I loved everything about it. I loved the movement. I loved the expression, the discipline, and obviously, performance qualities and just the joy of dancing, essentially. And then, ever since I was a little girl, I've loved houses. So I was one of those little girls who didn't read like Cosmo magazines. I had Architectural Digest when I was 11 years old. So, and I made my dad drive me around and look at beautiful homes in Hungary, and architecture in Europe, as you know, it's a whole different ballgame. So those two loves have really kind of carried through the path that I've taken to where I am today, and that I think also is a great segue into why I am where I am today, because I do believe that if you really want to be successful in life, and whatever your definition of success is, and if, let's say, we're talking about a profession or a hobby, you want to be passionate about the core of what it is that you do. So for me, I've loved homes and I've loved dance, so it was just a natural fit for me to follow those paths. Interestingly enough, when I moved to Canada, I did not really have a home. So I moved in to a home that wasn't a good environment, and then I had to find a place to live. So I rented a room in Barrie. Oh, wow. And at that point, and to be quite frank, motivation for me was very much fear-based at the time. Yeah. Because I said, I will work until I make sure that I don't ever have to feel like there's no roof over my head, basically. Right. And that's not to say, I don't want to say I was homeless by any means, but it wasn't a good, easy environment to be in. So that fear base, that was the first, push of or catalyst to, again, growing our wealth and our, our mini, we could call it our nest egg or empire, whatever you want to call it.
I like empire. I like empire too.
And so that's how it started for me. And through, going through college and having a career job, I realized that reaching my full potential within the corporate environment would be much more difficult. I was always a little bit of an outsider. So for me, I needed to find an outlet where I knew that the success is in direct relation to my effort, basically. And there's no ceiling, there's no limit. So that's how I've grown to where I am today. And I think that was part of the journey as to how I met Clifton as well.
That's so beautiful.
So that's the nutshell story.
Wow, how do I follow that?
Give it a try.
That was awesome. There goes nothing. Well, as you know, my name's Clifton, and I am born here in Toronto. But my parents are from Jamaica, and I come from a very, very strong Jamaican family and upbringing. So culturally, if those of you who know are familiar with Jamaican culture, music and dance and singing is a large part of it, right? So, coming out of the womb, I've always been dancing and singing, always. And that combined with some principles, some foundational skills that I think my father and my mother, but a lot of it from my father instilled into me was a few things. And it carried from since I was a little child to now. One being, if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. That's one.
Ooh.
Two, if you decide to take on a family, meaning having a child or taking on a wife, your responsibility is to take care of them and to provide for them by any means necessary. So it's not like love is great, but love really has nothing to do with it. It's your job. I tell my son this all the time. I'm doing this for you. Yes, I love you, but that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because it's my job. I took on this responsibility. So you decide to take on a family, it's your responsibility to make sure you're supporting them. And then the other thing, which I think I got this more from my mom, is to have fun throughout this whole process called life, right? So, I'm sure we'll dig deeper into that as this little conversation progresses. But in everything that I try to do, I try to apply those things to it. So a lot of the things that I've done many things in my life. I'm not the type of person, like Andrea is a real goal-getter. She sets a goal, I will always bet on her.
Same
if you
here.
bet against her, you're losing your money. I promise you that. She sets goals and she attacks those goals. For me, I have goals as well, but it's more like, you know what? I like this. I think I could be good at it. Let me go do it.
I relate.
I'm that kind of person. And and throughout different stages of my life, I've been kind of paired up with, or I guess attracted to, other people that have kind of given me that extra push to say, hey, not only are you good at this, but you can actually make it at this.
And
right?
excel.
And excel. And Andrea is definitely one of those people as it pertains to where we are right now. She's like, hey, you're great at this. Now light a fire under it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And then so said, so done. Right. So, I think a lot of it for me is not only goal setting and goal oriented, but really just being able to take a risk on yourself and betting on yourself. I find that when I look back at my life and I look at the things that I've done, I'm like, I always think back, I'm like, well, this person actually pushed me to do that. And then this person actually pushed me to do this. So now if I meet someone on the street and they say, hey, you should really go do this, I'm going to go do it. Because
Already there.
Yeah, I'm going to go do it because it's worked thus far, right? So try things, go out there and try things.
Ooh. Well, what about that other question, the important one, how you guys met?
Okay, so I'll give you my quick rundown.
Okay.
So this is what happened. So we met dancing, actually, at one of our very first dance classes, and that was 17 years ago now, believe it or not. It was 2005. Yeah, 17 years
So
ago.
wait, first classes for both of you?
One of the very first.
Okay, cool.
Salsa dance.
Salsa.
It was,
Yeah.
in
Salsa.
Yorkville at the time at Babalu. And so that's how we met, and we both are passionate about dance. At the time, I had just gotten out of a long relationship, And so one time he asked me if I wanted to go practice with him at Babalu.
Yeah.
And he fell into the wrong timing, unfortunately, because he would have been at that point one of the quite a few people at the time who would have been like, do you want to go on a date? Do you want to
Yeah.
And when you're nice, it can be misunderstood for a yes. So I was at the point where
So she decided not to be
where
nice.
I wasn't rude. I just said, hey. I was very matter of fact, which, by the way, I can be. I
Yeah.
can be very matter of fact, which can be misconstrued at times. So I'm always it's a work in progress. But anyways, so for clarity's sake, I said, I just got out of a relationship. For clarity's sake. So I have no interest in going on a date. And he's like, whoa, okay, fine, but that was just
so
to
funny.
go practice. Like literally, I don't even want to go on a date with him. Okay, that's fine. So then we became friends, and we danced on the same team for a couple of years, and I saw how he treated others, and so it wasn't like a love at first sight thing. It wasn't on my radar by any means. I don't know about him. He can tell you if I was on his radar or not. But
you worked at that.
It's time, patience.
But for me, it was seeing on that team that we danced on how he was punctual, how he was reliable, how he treated others with respect and kindness, and he was always willing to help. And he didn't do it to impress me. It's just his innate nature. He's very altruistic. So that kind of was like, I was like, okay, all right. So we became closer friends, and then
Now
I
she
really
wants to
love
go on a date.
I really love that.
that was
The more like rooted in rationalization and goal setting, and the more altruistic and floaty
Yes.
dreamer. Oh, this is
Right.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And your version, Clifton?
I mean, she's not too far off. It's pretty good. So we were going to Babalu at the time. Babalu had like an after work like lesson, if you will. So I had just gotten into it, and I'm like, man, I'm loving this thing. I'm gonna go and get this lesson in pretty much it was every Tuesday, right?
yeah, every Tuesday.
Yeah. So right after work, boom. I used to work for IBM, and I'd come in like my dress clothes and everything. Boom, I'm there. And we'd see each other every week. We dance with each other every week,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know. I'm just thinking it only makes sense. Let's get together and
gosh, I love
progress together in this new skill that we're trying to get better at. That's the way I saw it. So, she was sitting there, and I remember I'm not good with names, but I'm good with faces and pictures. I could see it. So I remember her sitting at the bar. As soon as you come down the steps there's a bar right there. She's sitting at the bar waiting for the lesson to start. She has on these light blue jeans ripped.
I love
ripped
that
in
you
the front,
remember. This
right?
is beautiful.
And she has on like a pinkish kind of belly top looking short sleeve thingy, right? Am I right?
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Remember very accurate.
Details.
so
17 years ago.
all right. So I'm like, well, it only makes sense. This is the only logical thing to do is to ask her to practice, because it only makes sense, right? So I go up and say, hey, so we're here every week. Like, I'm just thinking if you're available, maybe we could meet up an additional day to this practice and practice together. She gave me one of these. Boom, looked at me, boom, eyes. This is the camera. This camera's looking at me. She looked at me. She was like, listen, I just got out of a long-term relationship. I'm not interested in seeing anybody else, so no. It's like, oh, okay. Thank you for your time. And I just walked away. Right? So,
Basically.
and that's 2005. And, we would dance. At that time, she started dating somebody. I was dating somebody as well. But we would dance socially, and then we joined a team, or I joined a team, and then she joined it after. And she walked through the door, and I was like,
Look who it is.
look who it
Look
is.
who came back.
Right. And then, as time progressed,
Yeah.
she
Got closer and
realized that we
closer.
should have just practiced 3 years ago.
Ah, see, I love that.
I think we needed that time, though.
Yes,
things
yeah.
for sure.
fall into place usually. It's almost like a pre-orchestrated manner.
So in
Always.
terms of your guys' careers,
Yes.
when did you you started dancing around the same time? Did you guys start going into real estate at the same time?
So no, I actually started earlier than him. So I had my license about 16 years ago.
Okay.
So about 16 years for me, and I think you're on year 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, so about 10 years after. So what happened was I worked for a large corporation, Magna International, massive multi-billion-dollar corporation. And I did really well, extremely well for, being a drop in the ocean there. But again, very quickly realized that I had the inspiration and the motivation to really take it to a whole different level. And that environment would have never allowed me to do what I've accomplished, not under that umbrella. Not because it's not a great company. They're a great company, excellent employment and all that, but because it was just, I was a drop in the ocean there, basically. So then I knew I loved homes. I actually first got my stock trader license first.
She was always going to make it. She was always going to make it.
It doesn't matter when
She had to pick what it was.
There was there was from when I was little, though. From when I was very little, I was always different from the other kids, which did cause some friction. But at the time I was 14, I had a conversation. I never forget this. This was one of those pivotal moments. I was talking to my girlfriends and this back in Hungary, and so we're in the early 90s, and there's not a lot of wealth. But I said, hey guys, one day I will have a red Ferrari. And it wasn't well received because they're like, there's no way, like that doesn't even exist on our continent. Okay, no, fine, in Italy of course, but in Hungary there was no, maybe one or two at the time, right? So I always knew that I wanted to really create something epic. So I think life is meant to be lived epic. I don't like boring days. I like things that are exciting. I love trying new things and traveling and things like that. And that's also why real estate was such a good fit for me, because there's so much variety, and every day I wake up to a new day, a new challenge, helping somebody new. So it really kind of fits into what I love to do anyways. So I got my license, and then I jumped into real estate from Magna and built my business practice from there.
Now, did you join a team at the time, or?
So good question. I did not. And the reason is because I am a very strong individual. And again, that came from, you're a little bit of the environment.
I find that's a lot of Eastern Romanian.
Yeah.
And my whole family, every woman in my family is the same.
Yeah. And basically I did explore it once, and there was somebody who said, why don't you join my team? But their branding, their mission, vision, value, the color, everything that the colors, the colors line. She's creating her art coming out. This is the thing, though. Like, it's, to me, creating a good, strong business, and every day we get a little bit each day we get a little bit better, but it's in the details. You have to pay attention to little details, and if you don't, it's kind of like building your business on quicksand. You have to get those little things right.
You should see their kitchen. It's every single detail was thought out.
So the colors were a thing that I was it was not aligning with what I would have, one of the many things.
They're lost.
So I said, you know what? So the premise was, I'm losing my name. I'm losing my identity. I don't get to create my branding, which I was extremely, by the way, at Magna, I created a product within Magna that I branded from logo to the last little detail, to training manuals. I get to travel the world to teach people on this particular IT app that I took on. So I created, and it became extremely successful. So I knew that branding was one of my strengths. So I said, no, I'm going to give it a try on my own. And there's no option to fail. So
I love that. No option to fail.
Yeah.
And then how did you come into it?
It's a great question. So not the same as her. My path's a little different. So I've always been, people don't believe this about me because I don't talk about it a lot, but I'm actually a nerd. I'm a real geek. Like, I like IT. I love IT. I went to school for computer engineering and technology, and I wanted to be an IT guy. That was my goal.
Wow.
I wanted to be now, they say, most adults, they change career paths like 5 times, right, throughout their life. And I'm probably on my 3rd or 4th right now. But most of it has always been in IT. I started off just wanting to work with, fix, repair, build computer technology. So I got a job out of school in IBM, and that was in 2002. And I started literally at the bottom, like answering phone calls. Oh, you want to speak to Mr. Bill Smith? Sure, let me transfer you. And worked really hard and worked my way up to a sales position. But before that, I was in a procurement department. And this is, again, why I say, if someone who doesn't know you and doesn't necessarily love you tells you that you're good at something, don't just take it as whatever. look into that, because they have no reason to tell you that, right? So my manager at the time was like, Clifton, man, you have the gift of the gab. You should consider a sales role. I'm like, I don't want to sell nobody anything, man. I'm good. He's like, okay, listen, they have an overflow team because these guys are getting too many calls. They're creating what they called was a SWAT team. And he's like, try it out for a couple of weeks. If you don't like it, I'll pull you off of it. I'm like, do I get more money? He's like, yeah, so sure. So I did the team and was very successful at it, like blew it away. And he's like, man, the manager wants to interview with you. He's like, go do the interview. I'm like, fine. Did the interview, got on the team, got my first commission check, and I was like,
now I'm going to reconsider.
That's where the love of commission checks started.
Yeah, exactly.
EFT.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, back then they were like checks. But anyway, I said, okay, I love sales now. So I was a sales guy. I worked for IBM. I worked for SAP. I sold all technology, hardware, software, and did that for like 12 or 13 years. And halfway through that, we started dating. I remember when she just got her license, she started doing real estate. Every year, she was like, you need to do real estate. I'm like, I don't really have an affection necessarily for houses and structures and stuff like that. She's like, every year you need. So finally it came to a point where I was like, man, I'm done with this IT stuff and try something different. She's like, go get your license. Just go get the license.
Yeah.
Went and got the license, dove in, and the first few years were tough, as we all know.
Yep.
Right. But once I got into the swing of things and really understood kind of what I have to offer and my positioning, because I don't think that you can go in and necessarily follow someone else's framework. You have to understand what works best for you.
True.
And who you work best with.
True.
Because there's not everyone out there is for you, nor are you for everyone out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I got a grasp of that and kind of remarketed myself, and I never looked back.
As the dancing realtor.
Yes, that is right.
So what is that? What is that exactly?
Okay, so the dancing realtor, what it means to me is I refuse, and this is for everyone watching, I refuse to hide behind the things that I love to do. I refuse to pretend to be something that I'm not. I only want to work with people that want to work with Clifton, not some guy who's named Clifton trying to be somebody else, right? I feel that everyone that I work with, they either were or have become really close to me. So what I've learned throughout sales back in my IT days, there's two kinds of salespeople. There's transactional salespeople and there's relationship salespeople. I started with transaction, but what I found, and my manager would always tell me this back in IBM, I was calling back my old people, just say, how's the laptop I sold you? We're not supposed to do that. It's a transaction. You sell, you move on. You don't talk to them again. Once I got into relationship sales in SAP, oh my God, it was the best thing for me, because I like to schmooze a little bit, go out for a lunch. How's it going? Go visit my clients. That's the type of seller I am. That's the type of agent you're going to get with me. Just because you sell, I help you find a house today, you're going to hear from me a month from now.
You're
gonna
stuck
hear
with
from
him.
Yeah. I'm
No choice.
Not even that you're with me. I'm still with you.
Yes.
Whether you want to be with me or not. Right?
Well, that's authentically who you are, right? So it's first nature to you to be like that.
Absolutely. So, and my dancing, as you know, Jessica, like I love my dance family. I love them to death. And I feel like
He has 10 kids, by the way.
yes, I do.
Dance.
This is true. And I feel like I create a rapport and a bond with people on a different level, both in dance and in real estate. And I felt at the beginning that I almost had to like shun that side of me, or kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like lock away that side of me. So people in this professional side, didn't know about it. And I said, no, why am I doing that? I refuse. I like to be happy and feel happy.
I think that's one of the things that makes the both of you stand out. And, when you look at your work, when you present properties, you add that, and that makes it so much more exciting and engaging. Like the both of you, when I see your stuff, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like right away you're engaged, right? You're like, what's going on over here? What is he about? It's not the typical, hey guys, welcome to so-and-so, right? And you're able to kind of pull your skills and your passions and bring it all together. So I don't know, Dre, I remember even when you posted a reel once, You posted a video of you dancing with Bria and I believe someone else, and you were showcasing the property. That's your value proposition. You're like, hey, this is how I can do it differently.
Yes.
And if I met an agent who was a dancer, I think automatically I would connect with them as well, right? You're speaking a different language, and it's not all about the transaction. It's who's the person behind, the name.
Yes.
So I think it's beautiful you guys both do that.
Why do you guys think that so many artists and people who are drawn to art are drawn to real estate?
That's a good one. You want to go? You want to answer that first?
You go first.
That I'm going to say it's there's a few reasons.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with probably the one that maybe isn't the most attractive. Most people that are starting off in the arts are broke.
Yeah.
And, it's really hard, especially, I won't speak for other countries, but here in Canada, we don't really dedicate as much time, energy, and money to the arts. Even if you look at our school system and our sports programs and music programs, they're almost non-existent, right? So there's not really a huge marketplace already here for someone who's in the art industry. So if you're a struggling artist and you're like, wait, I want to be able to do my art, but I have to make money as well. Real estate is one of those professions where you can almost, you don't have a boss necessarily, depending on what kind of realtor you are. You can go and get your license at your own kind of leisure sort of thing. If you get the license, then you could kind of sell as much as you want. Now, I think that's the initial reason. It's not a good one, in my opinion, but it's the initial one because I think the entry point is easy, right? But then I think if you're of a mindset where, you see that this is something that could actually be not only an income, a stream of income, but it can also be a career, right? Then you might find a way to kind of collabo the two and make them mesh together. Like in my whole dancing realtor thing, I've met singing realtors, I've met teacher realtors, I've met so many other different people that like reach out to me and they're like, man, I love this idea. I do this, but I'm also a realtor, and you just gave me, kind of the confidence to go forward and try to combine the two. So I think to answer your question, I think it's an easy entry point, but unfortunately, if you just see it as that, I think a large number of people don't end up being successful in it because they stick to that reasoning. And
maybe part of it too is that they actually let the artist part fall away.
That too. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's you don't see a lot of dancing lawyers or brain surgeons. I mean, and
but
that's because
there probably are, right?
There are, but also because the barrier of entry and the amount of work it takes to, become, let's say, one of those professions. You're literally years and years of study and tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Whereas real estate, in my opinion, is one of the most, I don't want to say responsible, positions with one of the highest responsibility for a human being with the lowest barrier of entry. And that's actually one of my, say challenges that I've seen our industry face over the years, that somebody could literally become a realtor within 6 to 12 months. And if you do have the gift of the gab, let's say, and if you are easily connecting with somebody, but you don't have the business acumen, the studies behind it, the research, the reliability, and all of the other things you need to become actually really successful and a qualified realtor, you can really do damage.
Yeah.
100%.
And I see it every single day. I'm like, because I go through listing, this is what I eat, sleep, and breathe, right? So I see things, and there's really 3 fundamentals when it comes to selling a property. There are 3 fundamentals that you have to follow and maximize to always create the best possible result. And the 4th factor is something you cannot control, which is the market conditions. But the 3 pillars are price, obviously, right? Pricing strategy and taking not just slapping a price on something, but taking the time to actually figuring out what is the best strategy for the current market conditions. If you do that, you're automatically, that everything is for sale at a certain price. You will get the property sold. Now, to really maximize what that price is, you need to consider two more things: the product, the house, what you do to the house or to the property. If it's an investment property, what are the things you can do to get it ready for sale, right? And that's one of the areas where I feel that nowadays with, so many realtors, I think we have over 60,000 realtors.
I think it's 80.
80,000
I thought it was at 70,
like every corner you can literally have a realtor.
Yep.
So I think one of the biggest things where I have gained a lot of strength too was adding extra value to my clients by helping them with every bit of getting that property for sale, whether staging advice, actually completely taking care of staging to make sure, because if it doesn't get done, I just know the price won't be as high as it could be. And then the conversation is, well, we didn't sell for as much. Yes, but we needed to do that to get maximum here, right? And then the third pillar is exposure, right? What do I do as a realtor? What can I do to get it in front of as many qualified eyes as possible? So those are really the three pillars. Now, it seems a little bit, simplistic, right? However, there are a lot of facets to those three pillars, and there's a lot of time that goes into each and every single one of those. Throughout the whole sales process, essentially. So you have to be able to maximize those, and you need a lot of education, and you need to surround yourself with good people, especially on the exposure side. Nowadays, it's not just MLS. It's not just a book that you flip open that used to be in, 20, 30 years ago. Even before my time, I think I escaped that. You remember those binder books?
Everyone keeps talking about those.
Everybody's
seen them.
I've seen them.
Anyways,
It's crazy.
there's a lot of smart things you can do, and always being on that cutting edge of marketing to figure out how I'm going to sell this property now more than ever, because the market has turned and it's become I'm not going to say balanced, because for a balanced market, you need about 4 to 6 months worth of inventory. Right now, we have 1.3 months worth of inventory, but a much more reasonable market than what we had seen in the past few months.
Yeah.
So having said that, I think that once people get into this business and they realize how much there is to it to make it successful and to really make it on the other end, the statistic actually is 90-10. 90% of realtors quit after the first 2 years. So 10, that's the average. It's not even an 80-10. And then those who don't quit, picture this, those who don't quit, out of those, 10% does 90% of the business.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's not as simple as I'm going to hop into this and sell somebody's $2 million asset that they've worked for all their life. It's not that. So if anybody's considering real estate, I would say reach out to somebody who's really walked the path to get a realistic picture before you consider it. And not to discourage anybody, because you could be very successful, but there's a lot to it.
100%.
No, but this is
important.
the hard truth. Like it is how it is. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yep.
As you were talking about staging, Andrea, I was thinking about that story you told me once where I don't know if I'm gonna butcher it, but you were staging one property. You had a client call you, and you had a truck. You rented a truck,
it happened.
and this is how far Dre goes to get her properties ready. Like she will literally not sleep, and she got a call from her clients.
Yeah.
And she ended up taking the truck. I believe Kingy was with you, right?
Yeah.
And she drove across the city to go and stage that property. Sorry if I'm butchering the story.
It was a good segue. So timing is everything in real estate, right? And this is another thing. You have to, because perhaps the misconception may be that, oh, you're your own boss, your schedule is so flexible. Yes, you have to set boundaries, absolutely. And as time goes on and as you gain more experience, I promise it gets easier and you will be able to do that. But in the beginning, it's like, you're basically bound by other schedules. And you need to accept, and I don't want to say need to accept that, because some people maybe from the get-go set boundaries and can be successful. But for me, if you really want to be successful, you have to make some sacrifices, right?
100%.
So for me, the timing was, it just so happened that I literally was, and by the way, this is, back years and years ago. And today I have a great big staging inventory, which He
loves that. He loves that.
Because we've had to
Where
move
is
it from
stocked?
stores. Anyways, it's
You ever see Storage Wars?
oh my God, yes, but we're still together, so
Yeah.
you know we made it.
You got this.
Anyway, so I mean, it's very cumbersome, and it's to shout out to all the stagers out there, because it is it's a very tough job, and it's not. I'm gonna say it's not the most like lucrative business on the planet, but these people really care, and they care about making things look beautiful and helping people. Like that's a good stager. Anyways, at this time I was destaging a big house, and I just decided that I was just gonna do it. Don't ask me why, but I did. And I had a big truck that I rented. He helped me out actually with loading and unloading some things. And as I was loading the items back onto the truck, this is in the west end of the city, I had a client call, and he said, look, we need to have our house sold. This is a really close friend, okay? So somebody who's really close to me, and I naturally, care to make sure that they have, good representation. So he said, we want to go on the market right away. And I said, okay, what do you need? And he said, well, the property's in shambles. It needs staging. I said, okay, send me some pictures. And I swear, this is not a joke. I drove the truck from A to B, and it was a 3-hour drive. I used my stage. It happened to it was a big house that I had to stage too. They were both like 3,000 square feet. And I think I got home at like 4 a.m. that day with my son, who, by the way, has been in the business with me since in the tummy. Yeah, in the tummy, basically. So, you do now. I have I have an incredible staging team now, and I just call them and I say, come in, and I'm willing to spend all the money on it because I think it's so well worth it. And I do think you need some kind of competitive advantage, right? And you need to show your clients. Like, I'm thinking, if I'm selling my home and a realtor comes into my house and says, oh, I can sell your house, statistics and things like that, I'm the number one realtor, this and that, it's great. But what are you actually doing that's giving me value, that makes me know that you're really taking care of getting the maximum amount of money? Are you pulling money out of your pocket and investing into my home the way I have invested into my home to get it sold at maximum value? So that's how I think. So I feel that that's what I want to give to my clients.
Keyword investing. And so I think this is a good segue into, I'm very curious to know what you guys have done together, because you mentioned when you first introduced yourselves, building wealth and building your empire. And I would love to talk about a project. So you guys went full circle. You were in Yorkville. You first met in Yorkville.
Yeah.
Now you guys are back in Yorkville.
I didn't think of that. Yeah. Wow, Jessica.
That's a good
That.
And I think what you guys did with your current property is phenomenal. And I think that's another thing to highlight, how your mind works differently than other people's. Like, it's just that creativity, and you said you love challenges and you put things together. So can you tell us a little bit about perhaps maybe any investments or projects that you guys have invested in, or even your own property that you have, and how you're able to kind of see a product and put it together to fit what it is that you guys are looking for?
Can I start this one? Because I'd like to highlight you a little bit. So first and foremost, Andrea she sees the future in a lot of ways. So she can make certain predictions.
It's the magic in that blood, in that Eastern European blood.
Right?
That's right.
It's quite amazing, actually. So, she takes on some things where you'll look at it and you'll be like, this is absolute ludicrous. It's just, why are we doing this? Right? This was me. This was Clifton,
before she did enough things that you were like, I know.
Yeah, I get it. I'll ride with it.
Don't even tell me. Just do it, right? But honestly, I think she has been like the yin to my yang. So here's how I describe us to everybody. Andrea will be like, I'm telling you, there's water over that cliff. I'm just going to take a big run and jump into it. She's not going to look. She's going to run and jump into that cliff.
I'll peek a little.
No, I'm like, wait, let me take 2 days to walk down the other side, get to the bottom, put my foot in the water, make sure it's deep enough, make sure it's warm enough. That's me. That's me naturally, right? So I think the combination of the two of us has been like heaven sent, because it's balance. It's created some balance, right? Because there's some things where she's just like, whoop, and I'm like, well, come back a little bit, right? And then there's some things where I would just be standing here forever, right?
And I'd be like,
And she's like, come on,
me.
right? So I think that has been, a really good piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the other thing is that when we talk about our lives as, children growing up and how we grew up, one thing that is, I think, universal for the both of us is that we always wanted to do well in life. I grew up in a household, I had both parents. It was a great household, had siblings, and there was nothing really crazy going on in my house. So we had a great life. But one thing that was tough is, for me, I saw my father, who passed away recently, last Christmas. He worked himself to sickness. He always struggled with bills, always struggled with money. I used to see him just always stressed out, and he never got to. He was a happy guy. He loved his music. My dad was a DJ, but he never got to really enjoy that part of life. He never got to enjoy his adulthood. When he was elderly, he didn't do anything. He was laid up in a hospital pretty much for the past 7-10 years, right? So I said to myself, ever since I was 13, I've been working, and I said, I refuse to be like that. I refuse to not be able to give my family and my children or myself a life of enjoyment. I want to be happy. So I need to do things now that I can plant those seeds so that when we get older, we can chill and enjoy life. And I think we're both on the same page.
Very much so.
Right? And with her, she's very aggressive in her execution. Right? I'm also, and we're both like this, but I think I'm aggressive as well, but she's like, I'm aggressive here, she's aggressive here, right? And on the other hand, I'm also very calculated on my end. I'm like, well, if we do that, what happens to these other things going down?
It's that techie in you.
Yeah,
my brother's
absolutely.
the same way. It's like, hold up, let me do my calculations.
Yeah, right. I mean, numbers wise, it's obviously all her, but in terms of risk assessment, that's me in my head. Well, what happens if we do this, right? What does that trigger? You know what I mean? So I think that approach and the combination of the two has definitely brought us to where we are today. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of start with that, lay that foundation. And if you want to.
Yeah, no, it's very true, actually. So I think, again, this comes from initially fear-based. And I know I've said this a couple of times, but I'm not afraid to admit it. Motivation isn't something that lives in you. You know what I mean? It's just such an elusive concept, right? So for me, to be motivated, something needs to light a fire under you. There has to be a why. And I know that you relate to this as well, because I've heard you talk about this. And once it's there, and once you realize that you can do, the sky really isn't even the limit, then you're just excited to be on this journey of what's next, what else can I do, what exciting. And that leads into other things, like your ability to help others, on whether it's financial or your time. So it's to me, it's such a good platform to grow and live that epic life that I like to live. So that was how investing started for myself as well. So the very first thing for me was I was going through college as an international student, and the only job that I was allowed to get was on campus. So I became a hostess on the campus college bar and whatever. So I was working in a restaurant kind of environment, and then realized that you can actually make as much money as a hostess in Canada as a dentist makes in Hungary. So having that perspective to me was brilliant, because it gave me so much appreciation for every single dollar. And so that's what I did. I saved every single dollar. I worked in between my classes to pay my tuition, so I never had to deal with student loans. So to me, it's possible. It's just how bad you want it. It's what you're willing to sacrifice for it, right? So going through those years, I never forget this. I remember I said I needed about $50,000 saved. So it was little by little. Every night, at the end of the night, I would not go party. I would go to the bank. I would put my money in there, and I would put it on the little booklet that you put in the bank machine at this time.
Oh, it must have felt so good seeing that.
It did, and seeing that. And this is, by the way, I'm very analytical and numbers minded. And I think that if you write down your numbers, write down your goals, and they're in front of you, it's much harder to lie to yourself than just being in this, elusive space of, I want to make lots of money. What does that mean? What do you need? Why do you need lots of money? And what is that amount to what quality of life you need? So you have to quantify it, I think. Maybe it works differently for others, but for me, I needed to quantify these things, right? So once I've saved my first 50K, I said, okay, I'm going to buy my first property. And it was a struggle because, at the time, my income wasn't that great. The interest rates were 5-6%. They were higher than what they are today. Prices were obviously lower at the time. But I bought my first townhouse. And I was like, oh,
how old were you?
I did this. I was 23, 24, something like that. Yeah.
All on your own, no help.
No, zero help, zero loans, zero anything. It was just sheer, you can do it. Where there's a will, there's a way. Like if you have something in front of you, the how will come. You will make mistakes. You will have to jump through hoops and, steer up the path sometimes, but you will get there once you have something very clear goal in front of you. So bought my first townhouse, and then he actually moved in there, and then I said, hey, we had our first baby, Kingston, and we said, why don't we see if we can find a bigger property? And so we ended up buying a pre-construction home at the time that was way above what we wanted to do. But again, I remember, like, we had a heart-to-heart in the parking lot, and we both shed some tears. Like,
I'm not afraid to say it. I cried that day because I was like, it's a big number, man. It's a lot of digits.
But we said, you know what? We have 2 years until it closes, so we can come up with the payments. And it's almost like one forced savings.
Yeah.
So if you are, thinking about buying your first property, and let's say you are, making some money, and pre-construction could be an option for you. It really could be. And you really can do it. Again, it's what you're willing to sacrifice for it. Are you willing to take on a second job? Are you willing to not have your Starbucks and your whatever it is that, that every dollar counts towards that? And those little things add up. And there's a great Jamaican saying for that.
What is it again?
It was just so befitting. Yeah. I thought you were going to say
every nickel make a muckle.
There you go.
Every nickel make a muckle.
Yeah, so, sorry.
I was like,
I thought it was like right already.
You gotta prep me on these
So
things.
usually it's like, it's already in his head. Anyways, so long story short, that was the first property. That the next one was, pre-construction. And as I was starting to really grow in real estate and do well, I started to sell pre-construction projects, and I really got into investment properties and understanding how investments work and how to match up an investment to somebody's individual profile.
And she was able to, I'm going to chime in and give it back to you, because this is now where she was able to educate me on this, because not anymore, but back then, I was really afraid of risk. Risk where... I'll risk something where I'm like, no, I'm going to get it. Like where I'm confident in, but I wasn't necessarily confident in that space. So when I moved into her place that she purchased in Richmond Hill, I had money saved because I worked at IBM and stuff, and it's just sitting there, just saving. Right? I had like $70K sitting in the bank.
And she's not making any money.
Yeah, she's like, what are you doing with that? Like, why is it? No, let's, and I'm like, right? So that was the first nudge for me. Go ahead.
To this day, actually, because we have some funds right now that are not allocated in our accounts. And so in today's environment, we're, as investors, are cautious and disciplined. And I think those two are the key things you need when you are an investor. Especially if you're a new investor, you cannot get excited about everything. It's like you really have to pull back. And so we had these funds, and just right now we have unused a TFSA contribution room, and so we have enough properties right at this moment that are in all 3 lanes of investing, meaning pre-construction, assignments, and resale, that we feel like we don't want to buy a property right now. Not that it cannot be a great idea at the moment, but we wanted to keep our money a little bit more liquid. So we're putting it through a TFSA and then rolling it into a private mortgage, basically. So your returns are larger, great, and the money is fairly liquid, and you're sitting pretty, and you're not, the cons of owning real estate, which are all, they can be mitigated, but having tenants, managing a property, closing costs, being leveraged, getting mortgages, those are all things that are, that you have to carefully consider when you look at your whole portfolio. So we said, let's just put it through. We have our contribution room, and it's still going to be about a 20% return once you factor in the fact that you don't have to pay taxes on your return, because TFSA is one of the few great tools that we have in Canada that were government created by the government essentially. So that was something that we did on the first home. But even before that, actually, one of the first things that happened was his parents were living in Pickering, and so they needed a rental. Now Pickering was very scarce in decent, affordable rentals. Like all they could afford at the time was maybe $1,200 a month, and there was just nothing. So in my head, I'm like, there's got to be a solution. We got to be able to move them somewhere where they're comfortable. And I started looking. I'm like, well, what about things for sale? So I looked at condos, and condos at the time were really cheap in Pickering, really cheap.
When was this? What year?
2013.
And you looked at the payments, and you saw that the payments were pretty much
more to the point where basically what they were paying at the time was the exact carrying cost. So what I did do was I looked at what the condo prices were. I looked at the building and Pickering's history, and I looked at the price increase over the last, I think when I went back 20 years actually. So I wanted to know what was the average annual appreciation, just to mitigate risk, because those are the things that you can do when you're investing. The idea is to minimize speculation. There's always a little bit of uncertainty. Again,
I have a feeling like you ended up taking that course. Did you end up taking the CSE or the other course?
I did, yes, I did, and I finished it and everything. But it wasn't. This really comes from, I actually think it comes from high school, to be honest with you. My education back in Hungary was very math analytical minded, and it was very high level actually. So my high school books were equivalent to my college books in Canada. So I went to a really specialized high school where math and analytics and things like that were just basically beaten into kids. Like
that's what we lack here in Europe.
You're just talking about.
Yeah. You either know or you don't. And some of those things I've learned carry to this day. They're extremely useful. So in any case, bought that condo, and I took Clifton. I said, look, this makes sense. Look at this unit. It was 700 square feet with parking and locker, Brock and 401 area, and it was $170,000.
$170,000?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Wow.
And you're thinking, man, we have our townhome where like, how are we gonna be able to? But just what I want to say is, like, if you take nothing else from this podcast, is dream bigger. Take that lid off because we don't know what we don't know, and I feel like we as humans are confined in this box, and we don't dare to just take the lid off and be like, but what if? So as a realtor, sorry, just jumping a little bit all over, but this is important. As a realtor in my first year, I aspired to be those that were like, in Royal LePage, the highest level is called Chairman's Club. I wanted to be in Chairman's Club. Now, Chairman's Club is the top 1% of like 16,000 realtors, so 160, and most of them have big teams or have been in the business for many, many years. So very tiny sliver of this community is like a young realtor with few years experience. But I was like, no, they can do it, I can do it. So just to see those big things, even though looking at the numbers and where you're coming from, and where where in our everyday lives we're always meeting people who are in a job where they're just like, man, I got a 3% raise this year, and you're within the corporate bands. I'm like, no, just take that off. There's so much more is possible, and you can do it, and you don't have to have a degree in whichever the major money earning professions are. So I took him to the condo, and I said, hey, what do you think of this? He's like, okay, but what about it? I'm like, well, here's the numbers. We can get a mortgage. We can get it approved. Here's the carrying cost. Here's the appreciation, the average appreciation. And at that point, I knew my numbers, right? And he was like, okay, there's nothing really. He's like, okay, so let's do it. So we did it. And it was the condo has tripled in value, actually. So the average appreciation since then has been about 14% in Pickering.
Wow, that's great.
Annually in the last 10 years.
Another thing, too, that I think we continue to find out as we progress is, you don't know what you don't know, right? And as investors now, we're finding out that having a team surrounding you and that actually wants you and your investments to do well is key. So when I say team, like, okay, we're realtors. We understand the real estate industry at a very, very good, from a high level, well-rounded. She's been in it for a very long time. I've been in it for a while now, and I think we have a grasp on that. But from an accounting standpoint, from a mortgage standpoint, taxations and all these rules and regulations, law. So we've now created a circle. We have people specialized in these industries of taxation, account management, finances, mortgage, and we sit with them, and we've learned over the past 2-3 years things that I'm like, wow, mind blown. Like, this is why the wealthy remain wealthy. Like, these are things that, and I'm gonna say, I don't know if it's okay, but
say whatever you like.
These are things that they do not teach us in school, at least here in North America. They don't want you to know these things. And the things that we're finding out is like, oh my gosh, why didn't they teach me this? If I knew this in grade 9, I would have been wealthy at 30.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean? There's no question.
Right.
That's how the system is built that way,
yes.
right? Not everyone can have access to the information.
So we're a little bit over time, but I do have one question for the couples out there that are sort of in the same industry. What would be your advice to a long-term partnership in life and in business?
You want to go first?
You go first.
I'll do it. I mean, I say people, we get this question a lot.
Clifton, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to be quick. So first thing, communication. You have to, and this goes for whether you're partners in real estate or in life partners or any other aspect of life. Communication is key. We are not mind readers. No one is trying to read your mind either. Just say how you feel. Mean what you say.
I feel like he really said that on behalf of all men.
Yeah, I was about to say, I felt that so deep.
But then when we do, they're like, whoa, whatever.
That's a lot.
Date is not a date.
Touche. But that brings me to the next pillar. So one was communication. The next one is compromise. You have to be willing to compromise.
Another one for the men.
Yeah, because I'm learning a lot here. Because when Clifton as an individual, there's certain things about me. I'm very meticulous in certain ways, and I understand and I realize now that most people can't deal with it. You probably would not be able to live with me because I just have things that I'm working on, right?
We all are.
Right? So you have to be able to compromise because you and that person are not the same. You have to give a little to get a little, right? So compromise. And the other thing is to stay true to yourself, right? Because even though we love each other and we make each other happy, I cannot depend on her to make me happy. I need to be true to myself and do what I need to do to make sure I'm happy, because when I'm happy, then she's going to be happy, right? So those 3 things, I'll keep it short. That's my suggestions and advice.
Yes, and his third one, I completely agree with. And I think more so, I'm going to say women, we get a little bit more lost in making others happy. Because we're by nature, we're nurturing. We bring kids.
You're hitting my soul right now,
right?
So going deep.
So we tend to sit back, and not to say men don't sacrifice, and especially if you have somebody who's good. Like, I actually didn't necessarily think I was gonna have kids when I was growing up. I was never like, I want kids and this and that, but I saw how he was with kids, and I said, okay, I think I can do it with him. And he's literally, I have to say, a huge portion of my success in real estate especially has to do with him being a backbone. When I say, hey, I need you to get the kids, I need you to cook for the kids, he's the one that wakes up every morning, makes the kids breakfast, lunch, snacks. It's actually not me. Like, it's incredible what he does to contribute, and I think that's so commendable, because that's how you create that partnership. So yes, but from the other 2 things for me are respect. If you cannot communicate with respect, you just have to be able to do that, because you're going to chip away at your relationship slowly but surely. I'm talking about just basic communication, name calling or yelling or things like that, right? You have to be respectful to your partner because he or she's another human being. You have to treat each other with respect. And then the second thing for me is connection with where we are, business, kids, friends, life. Like, it's so easy to slowly drift. So whenever I feel a little driftish, because we're so busy, I'm like, hey,
Hi.
let's go and let's do something. And I think that effort has to come from both sides so that you still schedule time between you and your partner
100%.
to reconnect and be like, are we still good? Do I, I want to hug you. I want to hold you. I want to, in whatever ways we express that connection, we have to stay on top of that the same way we stay on top of things we're passionate about. So those are the things that I think will carry you through for sure.
Wow, that was beautiful.
I think we're going to have them come on another episode.
Yeah.
There is so much I want to keep asking you guys on the family side of things, the dance side of things.
It went by very quickly. This was probably one of the quickest feeling episodes.
Yeah. Both are very well spoken and you have a lot of wisdom and insights to share. We would love to have you on. I'm just speaking on behalf of Bianca and I.
Oh, she knows. She knows how I feel.
I would love to.
But yeah, that being said, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed being here.
Where can we find you guys on social media?
Okay, so I'm actually very big on social media, and not very big as in I have a large, but I'm a big proponent of social media. So I only have one profile on Instagram, and that's Lux, Lux, real estate. So pretty easy to remember it. And of course, Andrea Hanak. Google my name, and then you will see every link that basically will come up.
Nice.
So that's where you will find me.
On Instagram, I am _dancing realtor. You can Google me, Clifton Stennett, and you will find all other associating platforms.
Awesome. Alrighty.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys too.
so
And we
much.
just want to say on behalf of both of us, I think you guys are doing an awesome job with this podcast. Not only is it fun and it's like a new spin on things, but it's also very informative.
Yeah,
so
sure.
keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Loving it.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you for
Until
having us.
next time.